Hello and welcome to innerGamers, the podcast about developing and using video games for our mental health well-being. Today we have our two memorable and beautiful hosts, Mike.
Hello.
And Danny.
Hi. And you yourself?
And me, hi, it's me, Kiwi. Sorry, this is it's right here, it should be the manner. Anyway, so, first of all, before we start, how are we feeling today? Let's say, I don't think in the last video we got it on the camera, so...
Yeah.
Wow.
The dog is?
Okay, so, how are you feeling today?
The 7, expectant.
Expectant.
Really? I would say 8. For me, it's 8. I'm in the toast.
I'm always a bit of 8, but...
I'm toasted.
I'm more of a 5 person, but honestly 2 is like something we should aspire, everyone.
Yeah, I wish I felt like that more often.
yeah, maybe we will feel like that after the talk. Yeah. Who knows?
Let's see what the talk is about.
Well, I think that we need to talk about something that is really important for us, and is the mental toll. The topic we're going to discuss today is the mental toll of developers when they're releasing games.
Yeah.
Video games are a essential part for our lives, and usually what we don't see is the other face of the coin. En la otra cara de la moneda en castellano. The other part, the other facets of video game developer, which is the part of the developers. Mm-hmm. Many cases, there are times in which such developers have to handle a lot of stress, a lot of negative criticism that people don't care, don't usually fathom, because it usually they see them as the big corporation behind it and not the people that go behind the video game. I want to talk about these sorts of places, these sort of toxic behaviors and whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So what do you think?
I mean, that is definitely a very important topic to bring up, because I feel like in the industry there have been talks about things like this for the past few years where, well, yeah, first of all, the public, they don't really see what's happening behind, but a lot of the developers in the industry, they were talking about crunch. They were talking about how the environment of work sometimes is very toxic, sometimes it's very difficult to work, and it's really debilitating when people who consume the games, they don't appreciate the work, in a sense, and they just, I guess it's I don't know, it's quite a complex thing by itself.
Yeah, and also as a developer myself, I see that there's a market of games that is enormous. There's a lot of games, and as a player, I see them and I can like some, I can dislike them, but there's a lot of effort behind them that I just didn't value enough before learning about development. Mm-hmm. And I bet there's even more games that they do and they don't release. I think there's so much, it's so big, and I don't know, maybe it's because there's a lot of competition, but it's so harsh. The
industry is harsh. I mean, the biggest example probably with Concord, it was called, or
yeah, well, that game was one that was released to extremely poor reviews, but it was rather for the fact that it had the quality of, well, actually it's in an interesting case because it was a game that was developed for 10 years.
Yeah,
it was an extremely long development time for it to fail in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And that can get a lot of long-term effects in the developer.
Absolutely.
It's in the emotional toll that that developers have when they're releasing their baby, essentially. Because sometimes it's literally like releasing your personal. Sometimes it's more like, it's a big corporation project. We did the next Assassin's Creed, or we did the next project. But sometimes it's just their own baby. It's their personal project. It's like their child. I bring you my brain. This is my thoughts. This is my artistic intent.
I cannot imagine it I cannot imagine people not getting connected with their work when they work on it for 10 years. That's crazy. You've got to connect to it to some extent, right? And there have been some examples of games that were developed for a very long time, like Duke Nukem Forever. If you know about that game, then
I actually don't know the development.
if I'm not mistaken, it was developed for like 14 years. And just for you to understand, the game they started the development either at the end of the 90s or at the beginning of 2000s, meaning that the technology
Was evolving,
very rapidly. And so they had to redo the entire engine and everything multiple times.
That's just entering
And
development hell.
it is, I cannot imagine how was it for them to develop that, because like people always talk about how that was a mess of a development process, but what about the people? What do they feel about it? Like how was it for them to be in this project?
Yeah, and was it successful at least?
No,
Because
I mean it was received quite poorly, especially initially. As far as I remember. I mean, I personally played it when I was a kid, which probably wasn't the best idea, but I liked it. But I know that a lot of people were very unhappy about it. And it just...
It gets to a point in which you just want to get the game out.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
I think there's a point in which the development times of certain games should not last as long as they do. Especially right now with the crisis that the developing crisis that we're having right now in the video game industry, of the massive layoffs, people not handling being able to cope or handle the emotional toll that releasing a game can entail, because it can lead to extreme fear of failure. What if it doesn't work? Because if it doesn't work, you're not going to get those precious benefits from websites like Metacritic, which in the topic, it goes to say, what do you think about the influence that Metacritic has in... I don't know if... Do you know what Metacritic is, first of all?
I do.
You do?
you can explain it. Like, I don't know.
You don't know? Okay.
And also a lot of people want.
So for those who don't know, Metacritic is a platform that is dedicated to reviewing games or reviewing media in general. But for gaming, it's really important because in some companies there are certain policies that say if we get a specific review in Metacritic, like 8 or a 9 or a 10, then you're going to get a bonus. You're going to get a payment bonus, which sometimes it's what helps them arrive to the end of the month.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, this is something this is a practice that is actually practiced in many companies, and that's why I wanted to talk about it.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
so,
I didn't know about that.
Metacritic can be the reason to release a game.
Metacritic can be the reason in which games are the way they are. Many games in which it's like, oh, it looks the same as the 100, 200 games, is because Metacritic has some specific ratings that, by the way, they are not revealed. Nobody knows what are the metrics they review and what are the reviewers sometimes. And people usually go by the flow. They go, oh, did this work? Let's do it again. We're going to get the same review because it worked in the past. And it sometimes can lead to a lot of like extreme toxic environments and competitiveness that I think we should not endorse. Yeah, exactly.
So it's not like Google Play Store that it's very important that I would also like to say, like, if you see a game, like the rating is everything, I think, I have the feeling. It's not only that, but there's people that release games only to get the Metacritic money.
Yes.
And that's it, not for anyone to play it.
I'm 100% sure there is. Well, like, I don't know. It was something that was discussed to me. Like one person that was really close to me talked to me about it, and it has appeared recently in some Spanish channels like by Debate talked about it in one of his recent videos at the point in which we're recording this. Yeah, I don't know. Like, what do you think? Like, what do you think about Metacritic?
Damn, like, I never knew about this aspect of Metacritics.
Yeah.
Like, before, okay, I know one thing that it's not the same as the Play Store reviews, because that's like user reviews, right? Metacritic is something where it's just an organization, I assume.
Well, it has some parts of user reviews. Like,
yeah, it does have like...
there has been in the past like review bombing and whatsoever, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the first part, like the official one, yes.
Yeah. Like the official score is like, it's not made by the community in a way. Like a lot of the times, like you have games that have like not a good Metacritic score, but they have really good community score. Right? Because like people who play it, they really like it. So to me, it's a bit weird because like a review by itself is subjective, right?
Yeah.
And then especially if you're saying this, that the like you can get paid for a certain like review, that is weird to me, because then we're relying on a system where somebody's like obfuscated opinion
Exactly.
can decide how much money you get.
Yes.
And it is really weird to me. And how much power they actually hold in that, that's quite insane for the industry.
And also that means that they can control how the games are made. You know, like if they start rewarding something, that's what people will do.
Actually, yes, that's
They
a
can
good point.
control the flow of the games.
You know what's funny too?
Huh.
There are some newspapers or some sources that value these games. Like the thing is that I believe that we know the sources, like we know the journalism sites that are listed in Metacritic, but what are not listed are the people from those journals. You know what's funny? Sometimes they hire freelancers. So for multiple journals, they may be one freelancer or the same freelancer for each one of them. Just imagine like you have 3 magazines and those 3 magazines are evaluated by the same journalist.
Oh, man.
So you have 3 grades, which are the same opinion or similar opinions or opinions that are they are supposed to be in line with what the magazine believes is correct, but at the same time it's like, yeah, but you have the subjectivism of the journalist. And sometimes those subjectivism, that subjectivity can get in the middle of the degree. So.
Yeah, I mean that's quite messed up, because just not having that clarity is already like it's supposed to put it in a worse position, right? Like it's like logically, if you think about it, you don't have proper clarity on what's happening there, and therefore it should discredit it. But for some reason, Metacritic has a lot of power.
Yeah.
And this is like, I wonder, maybe like we should get into the history of it all, how it started as well at some point, because I just wonder how it happened. Because like it's been there for years.
Money moves.
Money moves, yeah, but still, it's weird.
Like, for example, I believe that media of this kind should be controlled. There are actually some other sites, for example, I have it right in here, it's called OpenCritic. OpenCritic is an alternative for Mediacritic that actually lists the sources. They actually list who is talking and who is reviewing and what reviews are coming, where are the reviews coming from. Yeah. And it's also open source, like it's open to the public and whatsoever. And I believe that we should step out of the grading systems, because one of the major problems that Metacritic has is how it values their games, because they are all valued at the same scale.
Yeah, true.
Like the grading system for Metacritic is 1 from 0 to 10, but it's not 1 0 to 10 in the context of action games or in the context of puzzle games or in the context of indie games or whatsoever. So what context should we consider?
I think that is also something like it's systematic, because it's not only Metacritic who's doing that. Like, for example, you get IGN reviews, which are also usually like 9 out of 10. And that's it. And what does that mean? Who knows?
Too much water.
I think that kind of makes sense, because people try to use what's familiar to.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that it's just easy and convenient. Like the thing is that when you have more complex writing, it's more fair, it's more clear, but it's less digestible, and therefore
people use it less.
It's less sensational. Like giving a 9 out of 10 sounds awesome when saying that, okay, so it's a 7 out of 10 in puzzle, but it had a good story. Like
it
some
can
games
have
do that.
Yeah,
some people do that, but the thing is that will that be as popular? The problem is that that's where as Danny said, money moves.
No, but I'm talking about like the full rating from 1 to 10. You know, that's what people is familiar with.
Yeah.
Like there's, for example, Epic Games implemented the 1 to 10 overall, but then there's the 7 out of 10 about art. I don't know, like that's good, but I mean, like I remember YouTube some years ago tried to do only thumbs up.
But are you saying that we should like think about it without a scale?
I think we should find a way in which reviews are more interesting to read. Like, for example, some reviews, what they do is instead of giving scores, they give an explanation.
Yeah, I mean, for example, even IGN, they usually have like a proper big review, and then at the end they have the score.
Agree. Yeah, but nobody reads the big nobody reads the chunk of text. They all see the big number and that's it.
Maybe both. You know, like maybe there's some people that likes to that it's lazy. They don't want to read everything, or maybe they just want to. Something that I do is first I look at the number. If it's depending on what, I also read the comments.
I think that's probably also the reason why Metacritic is so big, is that you can get just a number, and that's a quick way to see something, right? Like when you're buying a game, a lot of people just don't want to read a review about it because it's quicker to just see a number, and you're like, okay, this game is bad, not buying that.
Maybe it's the first filter, the first fast filter to just watch a number. From the good numbers, then you read the review. Yeah,
it's sort of like even in research, it's easier to digest quantitative data, but getting qualitative is a bit more difficult, right?
Yeah.
So it's like something easy to digest is a number, and then if you want more details, then you go for the qualitative, you go for the description, which is what most such websites do. I don't know about Metacritic specifically. But I just know about IGN because I usually watch.
IGN is another one of those. But I think because IGN is a singular magazine, a singular journal. I think the opinion is, since it's singled out, you can understand. Like usually they have the authors, the journalists that actually write them. In Metacritic is the case that it doesn't. It has way more power because it combines all of them into a single point. This brings to the point in which the big number on the screen, at what point is constructive? At what point a number can get the constructive or deconstructive?
I think that's why any number should have something backing it up. You know, like if there's
like proof of that number.
Sort of like
why?
If there's a number, there should be a description.
How would you describe a good feedback for a game?
Maybe some criteria. You know, like based on this, what score do they like? It's always going to be subjective, you know, like not everyone is going to have the same opinion about a number. But I think numbers are important because of this huge community of games. Like you cannot just read 1,000 comments, you know.
Seeing 1,000 numbers is quicker than reading 1,000 reviews.
And also review is also subjective, you know, like
True.
You can read a review that can be like when you read opinions about a restaurant, you know, maybe for you is the best in the world, that someone says that the food is trash, you know, and you don't agree.
The other thing is that if you, for example, create some rigid criteria, that could work, but at the same time, it's also very genre specific.
Yeah.
And the thing is that could limit like certain genres as well. Because, well, some games try to fuse genres, some games invent new genres, and then the rating criteria might not be relevant for them. So it's quite a complex thing, and I just wonder, like, how all this influences the developers specifically, like what happens in their minds with this.
Actually, do you think it would be better if there was no scores at all? You know, and you just tried a game that you find.
The thing is, how do you know which games are good and which games are bad?
That's it. Like, what if you don't know if a game is good or bad?
I mean, hey, even in reality, usually, like, if somebody is getting something, they recommend it to friends. They say, it's good. Like,
maybe that way it would work better because you would try all the games, no matter if they are good or bad scored, you know? And then the good ones would stand out because people recommend them. And there would be communities that they recommend.
So the thing is that this whole system is sort of built upon that, but it's just already so like...
That it was not always like this.
It's so high level that it already lost the sort of grassroots origin, right? Like it lost the communal part of it. It's more like, okay, this is a huge corporation that is just giving you a number and you just believe it. Right, yeah. But it's based on the same mechanism in our brain. I mean, like somebody's recommending it.
In the end, it's just a marketing tool.
Yes,
like it's a way. It's a way to generate hype.
Absolutely,
which is something that also I wanted to bring up.
Yeah,
the way in which reviews or these types of like recommendations whatsoever can generate overhyping for some projects.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's not about the hyping that much. I think it's power. You know, like. If a website gets a rating, like gives a rating, the website gets power, you know? Like, what if a game pays them? They may get a stronger score, and they may get a lot of money because people place it because it has a good score.
So, again, we're going for it's a marketing tool.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, like, if they don't have any score, like, they don't have any power, you know? Like, I think that's why we cannot change it.
Yeah,
but I don't think it's not been always there, and I don't think it helps that much. Like it just limitates, and they dictate what's later and what's not.
It's been there for a while though. But I just think like I wonder as a developer, because I'm also a developer, but I haven't yet gotten into publishing. Hope to get there soon. Like it's quite. Like it must be debilitating to sort of think that everything relies on the like Metacritic score.
Yeah, quite literally.
Yeah, and I mean there's always like when you make anything, a lot of what you call success is reliant on what other people think about it, right? Like when you make any sort of media, it's about how people consume it, whether people like it and all. But here it's like. I mean, in a lot of cases, in a lot of media, it's also like it comes to the critics, where critics are the people who are like more knowledgeable in the field. So
sure.
Yeah, they sort of like they give scores that are more influential, right? Like it's a thing in music, in academic music, it's a thing in art, it's a thing in a lot of places, and like just an opinion of one biased person can be very influential for the success of anybody, it is quite limiting, especially when things change, right? And people who have, like again, this is where it's interesting when games get bad Metacritic score, but they get good community score.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the community score should be more influential.
Then you fall into one problem, which is review bombing. Imagine if in the end, the public is the one who has the power because it's going to be the one who's buying the game. So when you have an entire population and you have an entire player base of people that are going to play the game and enjoy it and they want to know a bit about it before buying, sometimes there will be people that see something that is controversial and they just put a lot of negative reviews. And that's going to tank the game. That's literally just going to kill the game, quite literally. So there's something about what hype does, about overhyping, because whenever you overhype a project and whenever you get a project to a high altitude, like look at No Man's Sky.
Oh yeah.
No Man's Sky was a project, for example, that was extremely overhyped when it started because it promised infinite exploration of planets and whatsoever. And when it released, the problem that they have is that the creator was snobbish about some of the decisions they made, and so they got a lot of bad reviews. In the end, it got better. The game got way better. They got a lot of updates, and it's still getting updates to this day. So it was redeemed, and they're making a new game.
It's the same with Cyberpunk.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to also make Cyberpunk also have the problem, and I think that if you can successfully talk to your community and empathize with your community and make them see you and see yourself as a person and admit your mistakes and actually release a game together, I think that can improve the game. But I'm talking more about how the player base expectations of a game can actually just destroy like entire game. Like what if everything you did was for nothing?
So I think that overall in this type of work, when you have something to present to others, like what we have here is just like an overblown thing that is already there. And that is whatever it is that you do, at some point you need to show it to other people, and their opinion will influence how successful it is, right? Like that's a thing with everything, and it's been like that for many centuries. There are people who, they made some stuff that they'd never publish. And then they usually are found post-mortem.
Oh Lord.
But I don't think that's the same with games, because with games it's sort of like there's an industry, right? Like an industry is reliant on publishing, and usually if you have a game that you made on your computer, I don't think that somebody's going to be like finding it anytime soon. But I think that is a thing that like you can handle it differently in terms of like how you market your game. Like over marketing is a big thing. A lot of, for example, mobile games, they invest a lot of money into marketing, but the game itself is not even what they're showing, right? Like there are a lot of ads, and it's notorious.
That's an entire topic.
It's like it's an entire topic of itself. But there are, Cyberpunk is an example of how like it was overhyped, and then it underdelivered.
Yes.
Right. And I think regardless of the strategy of like how you do it, like for example, Valve, they have the exact different like philosophy. They don't want to release a game that is half-baked. So they will delay it until it's finished, right? Like with Half-Life 2,
and right now with Deadlock.
Yeah.
If no one knows, Deadlock is a secret project that Valve is developing, which is a MOBA, a third-person shooter MOBA that is developing with their own strategies similar to Dota 2 in philosophies and whatsoever.
Yeah, so I mean, with Deadlock, I think it's actually really cool what they're doing, because they have an open beta that anybody can be invited to, and I personally played it as well, and it's really cool that they can sort of engage with their community and craft the game.
They are developing together with the community.
They're developing together with the community. That's awesome. And that's one way to do it, right? Like that's one way to make sure that the game works and that there are no things like Concord.
Yeah.
But for example, with Cyberpunk, the thing about Cyberpunk is that despite them having that initial failure, they handled it really well later, right? Because they updated the game, they made it run better, they removed most of the bugs, and then they made a killer of a DLC that everybody really, really liked. And this is where I think that it's also about how you take the failure, right? Like, and whether you also have the resources to continue like working on the game.
Yeah, which like in other resources, like I think it's important also to reiterate or to teach different coping mechanisms that developers can use. Like we mentor a lot of kids in our bootcamp. In video games bootcamp, we handle a lot of criticism or how they can we handle a lot of people that have to handle stress on the daily. So I want to hear also your opinion about how can developers cope with this type of stress and crunching and everything like that. What would you tell them, for example?
Now I was also like reconsidering everything, like with your explanation especially. Now I'm not seeing like I'm having this second opinion about bad opinions, because I've seen some games in the past that are not good or they don't have good opinions. And most of the games, when they have a bad opinion, they just die. You know, like
Yes.
for example, the mobile games, if they have a 4 out of 5, they die. Like it's not good enough because there's
Really?
games that like if it has less than 4.5, it's not good enough. But I've seen games that instead of just letting it like this, they try to do a big update or something, and then they get reevaluated. You know, like that's something that we should implement more. You know, like the testing it and remaking the bad parts, like getting a lot of feedback.
I think feedback is very, very important overall. Like whenever you develop a game, the feedback and playtesting is everything.
Even if it's a bad opinion, even if it's the community that is trolling or something, maybe that's a signal that you can change something, you know? No one is giving, like, even if you, for a big game like Cyberpunk, if you have a lot of bad opinions, that means a lot of people is judging you. So you can make something for people to rejudge you, you know? Like, they had the luck that they were popular before releasing it. So since they got a lot of bad opinions, they remade the game, and people were trying to judge it back to say a lot of bad opinions or something. So they just saw that it was not that bad.
Yeah, I think it's like a lot of it is about handling the opinions, but it's also, I think, very different on different like scale of companies, right? Like for example, when it's CD Projekt Red releasing Cyberpunk, I mean, a lot of the workers were overworked. They were crunching like crazy for the publishers and everything. But I wonder, like, if it was better for them later, like when the game went out, maybe like they got some initial money from the release, and then
use that money.
I mean, they used the money, and they had a better like a space, and they had better pace to develop the game and make it better, which was like it's a good thing, right? Like they had the opportunity to do that, but in some cases, especially for indie games, it might be very challenging, right? Like, because when they don't have proper resources to continue, like
that's true, and and also to use marketing, you know, because the only success for a video game is for people to try it.
Absolutely, you know? And this is where, you know, especially for indies, for small teams, they can have the vision, they can work on it for free, but if they don't have any resources to continue, mental resources, physical resources, whatever it is, it's very difficult to change that. And that is why there's so much pressure about like this initial release, especially for smaller projects, I feel.
Yeah.
Because for bigger projects, there's a chance to still work on it, usually. But if it flops completely, like Concord did, that's a precedent, honestly. Like but yeah. And also, we're not even talking about how many projects get canceled.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I know that there are some indie games that, you know, Silksong, how was it? Hollow Knight, Silksong.
Yeah,
everybody's waiting for that for a while, but
you just open a wound right here.
I just wonder what's happening behind the scenes. Like, what are the people?
I think they're just being quiet about it.
Maybe. But
Like,
there's another example of the developers of Celeste. They were developing a new game.
Oh yeah, they canceled it.
And they canceled it.
Yep.
And they gave an explanation why. Because they didn't feel like doing it anymore, right?
Because they had different opinions. They had contrasting opinions between, I think, some owning rights for Celeste between the artists and whatever.
It was a company problem.
It was a company problem. Yeah, I think.
But there was not only that. There was also like they felt personally like they just don't want to work on the project anymore. Like, at least that's what.
Yeah, it didn't feel right.
Yeah, it just didn't feel right. And I just wonder how it is to live through those, you know, through those things, and how it feels like canceling a project like that, or, you know, what it feels to push a project, like crunch on it, and then release something half-baked? And like, how do you persevere there? You either sort of give up and you say like, I did my best, I'm not doing this anymore.
You get imposter syndrome.
Yeah, and you sort of either like completely drop it or try to work on something else. Or you persevere and you're like, this is worth investing, this is worth working on and making better, right? Like it has potential. I think it's something that, especially if it's bigger companies, is like a collective sort of subjectivism where people, it's like a like the mood, the spirit of the company.
And do you think it would be beneficial, like, for all the game releases to be two-step release? First, like a prototype to...
An early access.
Yeah, but more early, like... So
Even more.
Even more early.
Okay, depends on the... For now, it depends on the companies. There are some games that release an early access. There are some games that release, like... I think it would be like a good practice. I don't know, what do you think about? To don't reach this 10-year development like crunch before knowing if it's going to be popular or not.
Okay, so this is where I think we're also getting into the question of how sustainable is it to make games like this? Because like we have been relying on an industry that has been growing and growing and growing. Every game should be more bombastic, should use more...
It's getting to a point it's unsustainable.
Exactly, I think so too. And it's like, it's not sustainable from a lot of different perspectives. And one of the biggest ones is, of course, mental health of the employees. Because
all the layoffs that we're getting, everything that is just getting a huge impact on the people.
Yeah, and so many people are losing their jobs because of this.
Yeah.
So many people a lot of people just quit because they cannot handle the pressure.
Some people, there was like, I read one documentary, one video that said that, well, it was from a documentary that mentioned a newspaper that said that they have something that is called workplace or something. No, I don't know exactly, but it had the word casualty in it. Workplace casualties or something like that. I think it was in BioWare.
Wow.
It was like, some people come back, some don't. And I was like, oh, we're using military PTSD terms for this. Okay, I see.
Wow, that's crazy.
It's really... Like, I think to wrap it up, on a closing note, I think we should start promoting in incubators, or in like network system. We should start improving our mental health networks, or mental health support networks. Are you?
Absolutely, and I think the other thing about the video game industry right now is, since the projects are too big and since the pressure is so big, it would be better to focus on smaller games.
Yes.
And that's sort of what the industry has been switching to for the past few years, as making big games proves to be less and less sustainable, and it's just painful. And it brings a lot of problems to a lot of companies. Like, a lot of big companies are just falling apart because of that. So,
and also, since the technology is evolving so fast, like maybe doing a long-term game, it's not worth it, because that could be another point, like another reason to make short games.
It depends, I think, because a lot of games also use like very high-end technology, and they need a lot of development time by themselves. But
in the end, I think the best thing we can do is just support our developers and support our mental health.
Yeah, I think over the structure should be a little bit different, and I think there should be more understanding of what the developers go through. There should be more like sort of unions. Like game developer
unionize anyway.
Because I mean that just helps with the community, and that helps with the
because no one knows and no one sees, and maybe even no one cares about like the state of the developers. They only play the game.
Yeah, and I think that right now we're actually heading into a better direction anyway. Like, since the industry is falling apart, sort of. But
We're getting unions for it.
like we're getting people to unite and change the system.
Yeah, we have, for example, in Spain, we have CESPI for it, which is like a union that had recently. They had the first.
Strike.
Yeah, they had the first strike. There you go. The first gaming industry strike was made a week ago,
Wow.
which was something that is to think about.
Wait, for real?
For real. Yeah, Ubisoft got a strike. Yeah. That's the first strike ever in the gaming industry.
And that has to be a strong reason then, like...
That's the reason that we should start focusing on the mental health of developers and their rights and whatsoever. And I think developing these kinds of networks is something that will benefit us in the end.
Absolutely, yeah.
So on that note, thank you so much for watching. If you liked our video, be sure to follow us on our social media, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.
Bye.